Now, according to Minister Pravin Gordhan, Eskom is technically insolvent and will need yet another bailout. In early February, we saw the premium on Eskom's 10-year bond yields narrow almost 100 basis points since the beginning of January. But what is the premium likely to be come budget day next week? Rashaad Tayob is a fund manager with Abax Investments, and he joined us for this conversation. Rashaad, do you agree with Jabu Mabuza? Would taking off 100 billion rands off of Eskom's debt books help in any way with a company that can't even pay for what is already borrowed?
I think Jabu Mabuza has been quite upfront that 100 billion rand was only part of the fix that Eskom needed. In fact, he detailed that they need the 100 billion rand of debt relief. They need a restructure in terms of looking at staffing levels and reducing costs. And they need, to relook at the whole procurement and the way the costs of procurement, etc. And then finally, they need NERSA to come to the party in terms of giving them a relatively high tariff increase. They're looking for around 18%. So he's looking for the 100 billion plus 18% tariffs plus a restructure of the staff and the cost structure of Eskom. Those are three very difficult things to get through in order for Eskom to survive. These are three very tough asks.
Rashaad, we saw the premium on Eskom's 10-year bond yields narrow almost 100 basis points since the beginning of January, but it won't stay that way. Surely the market is awaiting what the finance minister will have to say about the blank check that yet again has to go towards Eskom. What are you expecting the yield to be on the Eskom bond come budget day?
Yeah, the rally in Eskom over the last month or two has been very interesting. There's two reasons for it. Firstly, with what's happened in global markets in terms of the global rally in bond yields, the push into emerging markets, that's caused quite a flood of money into dollar-denominated offshore debt, and Eskom's been a recipient of that. Secondly, the statements that you've seen from Eskom, as well as the Minister of Finance, as well as President Ramaphosa, have been very supportive of Eskom. So global investors have essentially taken the view that government is going to back Eskom regardless. They're going to do the bailouts which are necessary. And that's why the bond yields and the spreads have narrowed. Now, I'm not sure that global investors understand the depths of Eskom's problem. And I think once they do realize that, they'll realize that this problem is not going to be sorted in next week's budget. It's not going to be sorted even in the next few months. This is a problem which is going to take years to resolve because it's been, over a decade of a deterioration of this SOE. So I think you'd expect some of those gains and that you've seen in Eskom bonds to be given up once the reality hits home.
There's only so much that investors can listen to this 9-point plan. We really have no details of this turnaround strategy and any measurable way of working out whether it's working or not. So, who borrows money under that kind of, there's no openness about what's going on at Eskom. And after what I heard the president say about his shock and awe at the fact that we have stage 4 load shedding, says to me that the problems run much, much deeper. How worried are you about the South African economy, if that's the case?
Yeah, I'm very concerned because in this global environment with ultra-low interest rates, there's still a lot of money flowing into EM. So you can have poorly run entities, you can have a government which has very high fiscal deficit, but there's a lot of money which is still able to fund you. The problem comes when some of that money begins to flow out, and then the tide goes out, and you then see who's got the real problem. So for me, the concern and the deterioration of how bad Eskom is, the deterioration in our debt matrix will be a real concern maybe towards the middle of the year once the US is looking to continue on its tightening cycle and pulls money out of emerging markets. That's when the real concern will start.
Ultimately, when a default is around the corner, and especially with an entity as big and as important as Eskom, really everything goes out the window. So we'll do whatever it takes to avoid a default. Should we not have a price? Should we not have a limit. This is as much as we will do in order for every vested power within Eskom to understand just how precarious this situation is. Surely, if the politicians keep throwing money at the problem and we can't really see what we're getting out of it, that cycle alone is dangerous to the South African economy.
So I think the politicians are only now beginning to understand that. So President Ramaphosa said we will not be held to ransom by Eskom. But unfortunately, the guarantees have already been written. Eskom itself has 350 billion rand of guarantee. The IPPs have another 200 billion. So you're talking about 550 billion out of the 670 total guarantees that the South African government has are to effectively the electricity, the power industry. So when he says we can't be held to ransom, unfortunately, that's not correct. We can be held to ransom because the financial damage has already been done. So we have to figure out how to contain that damage. And unfortunately, over the last 10 years, Eskom has been allowed to operate with impunity. The Treasury has been unable to keep a lid on and financial control on Eskom. Under the Zuma administration, they were battered aside. They were told that Eskom was falling under the Department of Energy. They were told that they were the accountants. They could not drive policy. So this period of Eskom deterioration has happened without Treasury being able to do anything. But unfortunately, they've had to write the 550 billion of guarantees to the power industry. So the problem is now coming back to them. It's a problem they didn't necessarily create, but it's a problem that they have to fix.